but then we try to focus largely on the discussions of today. I think that was important, largely on what we heard rather than what we have experienced or what we know already. So you will find that quite a lot of discussion centered around the Bolivian situation, as well as some of the presentations we had through the storytelling that we had, 4 of them. So you will find that it's in a way a bit, I would say, incomplete. It represents our discussions in a rather incomplete way. Nevertheless, I'll present them. When we looked at common property resources, we were also told that we look at land and things on land like pasture, fodder, or forest as common property resources, and not certain other things like water and all that. So our discussions were confined to land as a common property. I think this is important. Again, as I said, a lot of discussion took place on what worked or what didn't work or how things work in Bolivia. I think quite a lot of discussions, also Roberto will agree, on how the land reforms, because in a way we were also influenced by the last presentation. Quite a lot of thinking on the last presentations as to what could be achieved in what time, what are the factors which were responsible for whatever has been achieved, what are the constraints, etc. So we looked at, when we looked at common property resources, land, and what are the lessons that we have so far appreciated from out of the discussion, we came to a conclusion that one, access to land alone is not a sufficient condition. Because in Bolivia, land was parceled out to quite a lot of people. Quite a few of them didn't have previous experience of getting the best out of land. In terms of putting the land to the best use, either in terms of agriculture or related uses, and getting best out of it. So that alone is not a sufficient condition, because one possibly finds that after the kind of reallocation was done, the agricultural productivity has been going down. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I think that is one of the conclusions we arrived at. Just kind of a reallocation or retitling of the land alone is not a condition for success. And then we looked at also the customary rights, especially from the Nepal experiences that we had. There are also, while customary rights are practiced in different parts of every country in a different way, but then when we talk in terms of legislation as supporting environment, most of the legislations have pan-national applications. So how do you relate the local application of customary laws as regards land, whether in a tribal area or a non-tribal area, or in an area where people of one ethnic origin reside and maybe they have a much better mutual cooperation? How does that reconcile with national laws? And also, we also factored in the power. If you're talking in terms of very clear interpretation of these laws through legislation, then it's not really in the political interest of the ruling elite. Because they would always like to keep people on tenterfoot by I would say, obfuscating things, by making things much more complicated and complex. And that's something that is coming out as lesson. Political will. Again, we looked at the experiences of Bolivia. A lot of groundwork possibly was done much before the current president came into being. 10 years of work was done, but then it required a last push. That is what probably the president provided, and it also enabled him to earn considerable goodwill for this mission. So it's just not enough to have everything on the ground. You need that kind of a last push for effective land reforms to take place. Also, a thread which was running throughout today's discussion was common property resources management. Land as a common property resources, its management is all about negotiations among all the stakeholders involved. Without this negotiations, you can have solutions, but they are not going to last long. So you need negotiations, intense negotiations involving everyone, and everyone has to be involved somehow in a way, in an empowering mode, in a capacitated manner. Otherwise, the arrangements can, may not really last long. Awareness and capacity with information. Again, Bolivian experience. If land is provided to those landless through certain legislative measures, it's also important that they would require to be aware. They would need to have access to all the information that is possible for the effective use of land, and also appropriate and useful information accompanying this process. So in a way, it is providing land, whether in an individual basis or on a collective basis, at the same time empowering them. Providing land alone is not an empowering process. Again, coming to the Bolivian experience, need for clear definition of the term resources helps. Because what we heard is that people who are being passing down land, kind of understanding is that the land, everything about the land, including the plants, is theirs. But in case this land is going to yield some oil or gas or mineral resources, somehow the people who have been allotted land will not have much of stake or say in that. Maybe the royalties and the revenues will go back to the government. So how do you define the utilizable resources when you allocate land? So that is one lesson which is coming out. And of course, inherent contradictions, because we, in all countries, we have a national government, we have a provincial government, we have district government, sub-district government, etc. But then the subject is either allocated in some countries to the national government, in some case to the provincial government or to the department. And then these, all these organs, they legislate, and then you have always, you end up with inherent contradiction among the various legislation, which is also another constraint in effective utilization of land resources and also land governance as a whole. What are the issues that would need to be taken up in our work forward as far as the ARD is concerned? One is the role of the state government, not state government, role of the local government. It could be state government in some cases, or the department, or the district government in some cases. How could they be provided with a greater voice? Because we often talk in terms of customary laws, but then these customary laws are pretty local. And then if you are going to interpret it effectively, you need to ensure that they have greater voice. And similarly, the communities which are going to benefit from the land resources, either better utilization of land or through distribution of land, landless people get some land, and how they can get themselves organized collectively into a group, and then how they could also ensure that the capacities are built in reasonable time to ensure that whatever rights they have got is effectively used. And finally, speedy mechanism, because in most countries the subject of land is comes under the civil law. So you can have any number of good legislations for governance of land, but when it comes to the question of interpretation, when you go to the courts and it lingers on for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, even in India, the cases which are running for 100 years, even 120 years on issues relating to land. So you need effective mechanisms for quick dispensation of justice on issues involving land